So, Keri, we're in Panama on the Pacific side. Panamanian hat and all. So you arrived in a mess on the other side, right? The bits missing off the boat, no steering gear, no wind vane, no just water down below drying out. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, Renato and I had a discussion before the start of the leg, and he didn't want to go too close to the Colombian coast because there have been a couple of instances of piracy. I think they were just sort of organised crime, really, and he thought we might interact with that. And he also thought that the customs cutters might intercept us. So he wanted to stand off 120 miles off Barranquilla. And Barranquilla, because of the high mountain that you've got there near Cartagena, creates its own low pressure zone. So the trade wind really reinforces along that coastline. So I wanted to be in relatively close. So in the end I said, well look, I'm going to go 50 miles in, we'll be outside territorial waters. And that's what we did. And I got through Barranquilla, and it was probably the windiest section on the Caribbean route. But as I came past it, I'd just gone below one night, and I think I was probably trying to light the jet boil. Next thing I know, it's like a freight train's come into my boat through the open companionway. I hadn't taken any water on board ever since leaving Portugal, and there was so much water that came in, it threw me over. The boat got knocked down to a capsized position. I mean, she righted herself, but it took a while, and as I was lying on the leeward side, all
sitting
the stuff,
in the bath.
Yeah, and the stuff that had been secured but was behind a lee cloth, water containers and stuff on the windward side were falling on top of me and hitting me, and so I was sort of protecting myself from that. And fortunately I was wearing my helmet because it had my head cam on it, or my head torch on it, so I could see what I was doing. But it was pretty, it was very violent. It did a lot of damage, as you alluded to. It ripped off the solar panels, so I was just down to my emergency solar panel, and still had about 2-3 days to go, so that was quite an impact. It destroyed quite a lot of electronic gear, iPads, phones, that sort of thing, with very light, it seemed like light dousing, but my priority really was to empty out the boat. Now, I did have the presence of mind to film some of it, so I'll push some film footage your way. It started at night time, and by the time I pumped out, which was probably about 500 to 600 litres of water, it was daylight, so I lost about 3.5 hours of just basically holding the boat in position to get her empty, get a decent lead for the companionway, using the pumps initially, but then worked out really it was quicker to use a bucket and bail out with the bucket from down below. And you're right, it was a question of drying out the boat then when we got here in Panama. What it did mean though is, because we were pretty much neck and neck, Renato and I had no, before I left there was no navigation card, navionics information on my chart plotter, which we subsequently worked out was an SD card reader problem on the plotter itself. So I've rectified that by changing the plotter. But without the chart data for the approaches to the traffic separation scheme coming into Panama, it meant I was obliged to follow the inshore route, stay relatively close inshore, and there's quite a counter current there. So I think I lost, beyond the 3.5 hours of bailing out, I probably lost another couple of hours with this adverse current. And the B&G comes with a sort of global chart coverage in very, very, very little detail. It's blocks of coastline. And when I made my landfall off the Panama coast, which was way more exotic than I imagined, with the rainforest and the hills and the mountains, there are a couple of offline rocks and islands that weren't on that chart plotter at all. So it was right on my tracks. I'm glad I did that by daytime, because that could have been quite nasty. They looked like sort of shark's teeth rocks sticking up about 2-3 meters from the surface, and then one big island with a pillar on it as a day mark.
That's a bit exciting.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Were you in that would have, when you say it's sort of violent, that would have been quite shocking. You must have been really surprised and thinking, holy shit, what's going on?
One minute, the boat's rocking around a lot, obviously, and it's always constantly in motion.
So it was night time and the hatch was still open and it was hot and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I was going to go back on deck. I wasn't going to be down there for very long, and it was sheer violence of it, really. And the wave pattern we'd had up till then, they were like 2 to 3 meters, 3 meters maybe. I'm viewing surfing terms. There are a couple of couple of heights overhead. But the one that took me down must have been a reinforced wave and much bigger. And there was some adverse current there, which was making them steeper and making them break more violently. But it was all stuff the Globe 5.8 can handle routinely.
Mind you, I think you got a new record, 600 litres down below. That's quite a lot of.
It was quite a lot of water. I mean, as people know, that's well. If we worked on 500, it's still like 520 kilograms of water on a boat that weighs 700 kilos. So that was quite a lot,
Yeah.
And it came up to the sort of top of the bunks, and I was sort of filming away. And by the time I thought, I better film some of this, Don says, with the moments you want to film and the moments you least feel like it. I thought, yeah, that's one of those moments. But I put it on. And it was a classic Keri video, really. I'm spending more time explaining why I've put a strum box on the loose hose because there's loose articles in the water. And I'm trying to downplay it because I felt such a chimp of having got water on board. And the fact I'd left my hatch open. So I was probably trying to sort of conceal that a bit.
Yeah, you just reminded me of the story, and you've got to tell. I'm going to ask you. You'll be very embarrassed about it, but it's such a classic because you seem to run a string of these different things. How did you lose your electronic charts?
So the first lot of electronic charts, yes, I very studiously bought chart coverage for the whole mini globe race route and other areas that I might divert to. And that's quite an expensive outlay.
Absolutely.
But I bought them on the Black Friday sales, and it was a bit of a challenge getting them delivered to France, and I was leaving for Portugal, so it was all quite adjacent. Anyway, I came with a full set of charts, which is probably about 1,800 to 2,000 euros of charts. Anyway, I didn't have a little folio to put them in, and they're quite small, the micro SD cards. So in the absence of anything really bespoke to put them in to keep them safe, I had an old mobile phone case, and I think I put them in there. And then when I got to Lanzarote in my tired state after helming for almost 6 days solid and no pilot, what have you, I saw this phone case in my chart table, which was already full of clutter, and I was trying to declutter it. I thought, what's that doing there? I tried to open it to check there was nothing in it, but it was a bit stiff, and in my frustration I just threw it straight in the bin. Didn't think anything of it. And it was only about 2-3 days before we left Lanzarote I suddenly thought, I can't find my charts. Where are they? I need to change my charts now, and they've gone. And I realised I'd thrown them in the skip. So I had that ignominious moment of having to go skip diving, identify the skip I thought it was, and empty it. And then I found traces of the food wrappers I'd used from MX3 Nutrition, so I was confident I was in the right skip, but the charts had gone. So Sid, my manager, did some good negotiations with Navionics to get some more discs made up. And I think I still own the digital rights to the charts, but
you just don't know where they are.
It was a bit convoluted to get them in. And then it wasn't until we got here, and I was trying to get the new discs in, they still weren't configured, that I worked out it was just the USB reader or the SD card reader in the BNG plotter itself that was defective. So it was never going to show me chart data.
Yeah. Okay. So well, that was all very exciting, and I look forward to seeing the footage. I didn't realise you had some of that, so that'll be fun. Stand by if you're watching this. Okay. So
to be honest, all you can hear is water sloshing around as well. It's like
yeah. Anyway, it'll be a good slosh. So then it was a case of take stock, because you're left with no wind vane, so your hand steering that leg. Then you've got the wind vane, you've got all the bits, and it's really hot and sticky here, and you've been going flat out ever since. Every time I've seen you, we've been trying to do this interview forever, and the day before the start or something, now we finally get it.
Yep.
So just give us a quick rundown on the workload and where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I thought, having left the original canard, the little skegs, if you like, dagger boards that the boat needs to give itself a bit more directional stability, I'd left those in France. That's another story in its own right. But I've been making some, and I started in Antigua when I could cobble together some core materials, and they are asymmetric and they're curved and they should fit nicely. I've made them, I've laminated them, they're pretty much ready to go, just apart from now from the final fairing and painting. And there was planned to have 5 days out of the water in Shelter Bay Marina, the other side of Panama, and that got shortened. By the time they lifted us out, we'd lost quite a few days, so with one day of rain I had 1 day, and the work I needed to do there was then to prepare the mounts on the transom to take these different profiled foils, and that still needs to be done. So it looks like the next leg, at least till Fiji, I'll probably be sailing without them again, but they're in the boat ready to use after that, and we'll see if they make you go faster or not. I mean, part of me thinks on the dead running they'll be really useful. On any other leg I think it's debatable. I think the rudder's fine on that. It's just those following seas, when you want to drive with a bit more power, I think it just takes some of the workload off the wind pilot. I'm pretty sure that's what Janice's idea was through the Setkas and now the 580 about why he puts those on. I mean, it's not just cosmetic, so there is a purpose to them. It's just now getting the opportunity to put that to a test.
Yeah. So, and your wind vane, have you sorted that out? So you got it back?
Yeah, that's the other thing. I made a new wind vane rudder. I didn't particularly like the South Atlantic blue plastic one with South Atlantic embossed in it from flow perspective. And also I thought it was a bit heavy, and there was a bit of a discussion. A very good friend of mine who's another naval architect. We studied naval architecture together in the past at university. He was saying, you've got to make it the weight of water or slightly heavier so it's not too buoyant. And I'd gone quite buoyant, so I was quite worried. And you and I had that discussion, and then I consulted a few
got to be buoyant
aficionado websites and say it is more efficient if it's buoyant. And I can see where he was coming from. If it's neutral, it's not going to drive the wind element, the vane that's meant to be the sort of reference point. But yeah, the conventional wisdom seems to be make them light and buoyant. So I've gone down that route, and that's done now. And I think I'm quite pleased with the result on that. And it is on I'd made up effectively like a rudder stock. So rather than having it in the water following all the time, I can kick it up without having to fold up the wind pilot itself, which is another option. But I think that puts a lot of load on the bearing. So keeping them vertical should be better, really.
Okay, so all right, and you're really giving a lot of pressure to Renaud, and there's no question. I mean, he's cooking with gas with his hydrovane and bits and pieces, and the boat's going well, no real dramas. You're hanging right in there with all these dramas as well. So where does it stand for the next leg? It's tactically very bland, but at the same time that makes it even more challenging.
Oh gosh, no, I don't think it's tactically bland at all, the next leg.
Well, there's a lot of blue water and there's a lot of holes.
Okay, and that's the issue, is going to be getting through around the holes. So I think I describe Renaud and I with a mutual respect society, really. I've got a great admiration for the amount of preparation and analysis he's done, and that he can factor in so much downtime when he's racing. I mean, that doesn't come about by chance. He's really worked at that. I feel like I'm dinghy racing all the time, and I've just rushed down with the boat on the trolley, put it in the water, let's go racing, we're not far from the start line, which has been a habit of mine in the past. But this demands a whole different level of preparation. So Renaud's got the edge on me there, for sure. But he says, but je suis très admiratif de toi, Keri. I really admire you because you're doing this and you're helming most of the time. So I need to find a balance, because I think I can drive the boat fast. I just need to avoid some of the calamities that slow you down or push you down a route that you like taking the inshore zone route, which was always my choice, but to go that much closer inshore to be certain of avoiding the traffic separation scheme meant that my options were limited. And the other bit is I still haven't had any sensible connectivity to look at either the yellow brick tracker at sea or to get anything other than my HF Fax type wind synoptic chart for wind forecasting. Now I've actually invested in Starlink Mini. I have Starlink at home in France, and that works really well domestically. I'm going to try it on the boat, and I think that's going to put Renaud under a lot more pressure, because he knows I'll be looking at the weather analysis and know where he is.
He went into heart palpitations when you went off the air.
When you went
off the air, he contacted us immediately and said, Don, what's going on? I can't see him. Where is he? What's going on? And I said, calm down. He's just off the tracker. We didn't know what was going on.
Oh, he said,
and boy, for a while there, he was just ringing every 10 minutes. Where have you heard anything? He was,
Oh yeah, I can get into his head now. Now I know that. Oh
yeah.
It's first he said to me, j'avais marre de toi. I said, okay, but none of this. I was really concerned for your welfare, Keri. Your yellow brick tracker. No,
right.
where the heck are you? I can't see you. And he claims it went off at the critical moment where he needed to make a decision to stay inshore or go offshore.
Oh, he was wetting himself.
I thought, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
A little bit of guesswork.
We need to introduce dark periods, where everyone gets the option to be dark for 3 days,
Yeah. I think that could tip his baking over the edge.
Yeah.
I think we mustn't push the old man too hard.
Yep.
And he did find that challenging. And I think also, Pilar, she had a bit of a wobble on the last race.
Yeah.
And effectively, because she found herself in the same configuration I'm sailing in, and she's a gifted mini transat sailor, right? And 4 transats, So it just gives you an idea. Well, you already recognise it, but the disadvantage that you're sailing under when you don't have access to working pilot, offshore connectivity,
totally
and
huge.
stuff. Yeah,
Huge.
and it plays mind games because you don't know whether it's the right moment to push the boat hard or to ease back. And particularly after we broke spreaders on the first leg, I was conscious of not pushing the boat too hard. But then when you get into a space of thinking, well, I'm not sure where he is, I might get an update from my manager who's looked at brick tracker and think, okay, I really need to push now, or I can ease back.
Yeah.
And I'd like to have that visibility throughout the leg, so I can make those decisions judiciously.
Yeah. Well, Pilar's back in the game too now. She's got the sail, she's got the hydrovane, she's feeling better because she had through that physical reaction as well with either food allergy or grand emotions or whatever. But she's back in the game. I think we'll see her up the fleet further.
Yeah, I hope so. It's where she merits being for sure. She's a very talented sailor. But she's gone to the dark side. All these hydrovanes. I mean, to the viewers, that's for 40-foot yachts, but.
Well, the
for
thing
little mini globe yachts.
I got to tell you, I'll tell you my story. When we followed, because Renaud was the guinea pig first boat across, stressing out, and we followed him for 3 hours in the car down the highway. And for the first time, I realised the advantage now of having the hydrovane and the bloody thing side by side linked together. It's like, you kidding me? It's like a rail. And that's very interesting. Forget about the self-steering qualities. You just have, it's quite, anyway.
And I know your analysis at the outset, when you saw a picture, I think, of Ayrton had put them too close together, you said that will never work. I think you were right, but what we've seen is with some separation.
Now they join them together.
Joined, and even more so, they joined their rudders. They've got a twin rudder configuration because the hydrovane rudder is about the same size as the globe rudder, and they're driving out the tiller pilot.
It works. Yeah.
So the electronic tiller pilot's driving the hydrovane that's driving the...
Yeah.
But people will always work within the rules but find a way to...
Well, the big surprise was joining them together. Ayrton's would never have worked if he fixed the main rudder, which you normally do, but now they've got the link there. They're working in unison all the time. It's crazy.
I don't think you could have foreseen that. And I think as you said from the outset, you can use whatever wind steering gear you choose. And they pay a penalty for weight because it's probably twice the weight of the South Atlantic. Yeah. But it's working for them, and it's giving them a lot more relaxing time racing.
So tell me, you were right up there as a Navy officer. You would have had a really nice cabin and a really nice sort of office and all that sort of stuff. Now you're sleeping on a bloody yoga mat. What did they do to you? Why are you sleeping on a yoga mat?
So I've always quite liked austerity, I think.
But
people who know me well think I'm a little bit of a headbanger.
Yeah.
And, you're right. The cabin and steward service and all that. I always felt slightly like it wasn't me. I was slightly uncomfortable with that. And it's part of the privilege of the job. And it's the idea is it frees you up to have broader capacity to do other stuff. So I understand it and the privileges of.
But now the pressure's on, and you're sleeping on a yoga mat.
Yeah, and actually, I took the yoga mats out to clean them, so I've been sleeping just on bare plywood surface.
Yeah,
that's fine. Best night's sleep I've had for a while. Yeah. But I like mountaineering and other stuff and bivvying out, and so sleeping.
Okay.
Not rough, but wild,
Yeah.
So no, I'm comfortable with that. It's good. And also, we don't want to get too comfortable in the boats. We oversleep, really. I think the good lookout is a key point. One of the former fleet navigator commented on the video that you, Rob, Jane put together, where it showed, and unfortunately the camera footage doesn't show the proximity, but the ship MV Armour that I had a close quarters incident with in the middle of the Atlantic, and a former fleet navigating officer said it's good to see that actually a solo offshore sailor is keeping better observance of the international regulations for prevention of collision at sea than a fully manned merchant ship.
Yeah.
I mean, said good to see. I think he was saying, it just proves that it's quite easy to suggest that we're not acting fully in compliance with the rules.
Oh no, yeah.
Which every vessel should at all times maintain a proper and effective lookout by sight, hearing, and all available means appropriate to the prevailing circumstances.
Therefore,
and
we comply with the rule because we've got AIS, we've got transponders, there's this whole argument, which is the reason why no one's ever been able to nail anyone, take them to court, because you are doing the best you can to your ability. Anyway, long story short argument.
It is, and we know that if we get it wrong, it's a lose-lose situation for us. In a small plywood boat, we're going to match wood in no time. Yeah. But it certainly focuses mine. So hence, I wouldn't want to be too comfortable sleeping at sea.
Yeah, but if you want to sleep, you should. Anyway, we won't go there. Yeah. You don't even have a pillow.
No, no, no.
And you're getting rid of half your
But
clothes.
I have discovered that if you wear a helmet,
Yeah.
it's quite padded. It's like
Yeah.
you know,
I understand that one.
You can be
Yep.
in any sort of position and
Yep.
you're comfy.
Yeah, helmets are going to be mandatory for the next MGR. So anyway.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
right.
it's pretty obvious. In
Yeah,
fact, we should.
carry them.
I haven't spoken. A lot of the guys and girls are having helmets, but I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So what about your food? What's happening there? You're settled in. You don't look too bad when you arrived, even though the boat's trashed. You sort of looked okay. You look the same.
Yeah, well, thanks to the French, I think. I've got MX3 Nutrition based in Sable d'Olonne. When I set out from Portugal, I had enough food on board to go around the world and back across the Atlantic.
On the boat already?
Yeah. So
that's counterproductive. You're sending your food home. You're sending your clothes home to say, wait, but...
Yeah, I also had enough gas for my jet board to go around the world. So
cheapest.
And what we're seeing is I'm having to give people canisters because they can't source it.
Yeah.
There are parts of the world you just can't get the stuff. MX3 Nutrition were generous in their prices they gave and discount. It's expensive, the Le Felice fried.
But do you like it?
Food.
Do you like it, or you just put up with it?
Some of it's very nice. Some of it's pretty good. No, actually, it's pretty tasty. There are a couple I'm not so fond of, but I'm going to enhance those. I got quite a few, chili sauces and soy sauce and stuff to liven them up a bit because it could get a little bit boring and repetitive. But what you do is you spare yourself the days you can have, that chicken tandoori or chickpea curry or whatever, as opposed to the worst, which is this sort of poisson parmentier or parmentier.
What about the serving size? Because usually they're pretty small.
Yeah, even then I struggled. I find that appetite drops a lot anyway at sea.
Yeah.
So if you've noticed, we're all losing quite a lot of weight on the offshore legs. The boat moves so much all the time that even if you're not running around doing a lot of aerobic fitness, you're always balancing and working to compensate for the motion of the boat. So I think we're burning quite a lot of calories. In terms of the meal sizes, they differ, but in terms of there's some extra sized ones or what have you, but I find that's way too much. And I think that our calorie consumption is not super high, so it's about right. And I think going into the Pacific and the Indian Ocean, we're into warmer climates, you're not going to have much appetite either.
Yeah. So what do you use as treats for food?
Well, I had first leg. They were the gels I was consuming, if you remember, on the qualifier, and I ended up completely high on caffeine because they had so much caffeine. After that, for example, there was a chocolate muesli that was pretty nice actually. So it tended to be the sweeter stuff. I guess that's always the case, but I'm not going to buy any or carry it. So I always thought, if I like the food too much, I don't trust myself not to eat it all in one go and then have nothing. So I'm not very good at managing. Is it addiction? I guess it's some form of addiction or whatever. So no treats, just sail fast, sail hard, and get there as soon as you can to enjoy the Marquesas in case of the next leg.
So have you bought any real food here, to top up, like wet food and stuff you can...
I bought some coconut milk powder because that's really convenient, and I have bought a few tins of tuna just to sort of, I think the food balance on the MX3 is probably a bit lower in protein than I think it should be at our kind of age. It's quite high in carbohydrates, of course, for the energy, but we're not really needing that. And I'm still tempted to try Radix Nutrition, the New Zealand-based company, if they can deliver to Thursday Island to take on some of their food and shakes, because they were very protein high, and to try them.
Yeah.
The French are good on style, it's paella or whatever, but it's an identifiable meal. The Radix Nutrition is sort of flavoured porridges of different types, really. But when you look at the constituent ingredients, it's really high-end stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So you're having fun? How do you treat? You're like it's obviously competitive, and you're a dinghy sailor and all that sort of stuff. But this is a long grind. We've only just started. So where's the fun coming from? Are you having fun, and where's the fun coming from?
So there's a lot of fun. There's everybody gets the blues a bit. I think the blues just trying to get the boat ready. There's this next leg being long, and the next opportunity really to replace equipment, probably Fiji. So it's got to last for a long time. Inevitably, with the sort of compression of boat movements and delivery times to get stuff to Panama, there was quite a lot of compression of work that needed to be done there. So I feel like I'm behind the drag curve, and if you dwell too much on that, you can get a little bit mardy. I think it's better to just say, no, I've got what I've got, it's what I've raced with so far. I'd like to perfect it, I'd like to be in a better position to win, but I'll sell what I've got and not waste too much, expend too much thought over it. If it's done like that, hit the start line, just sell what you have.
So you're only a few hours behind Renault, so it's a long way.
Yeah.
This will be a telling leg though.
This will be a telling leg, and my concern is going through in French. We call it the Peau Noire, those sort of convergence zones, South Pacific convergence zone edges, or the Easter Island edge, where we might see quite a lot of thunderstorms and lightning.
Yeah.
That's always going to be an apprehension for me. I think it's the one thing I really don't like at sea. I'll take wind and waves.
Yeah,
but
thunderstorms.
I don't want to get struck by lightning. Mercifully, I once was in a marquee that was struck by lightning. That was bad enough. But
do you have a Faraday's cage or something that you can use?
I bought some aluminium foil.
Oh yeah.
And I think I'll put stuff in a plastic box and wrap it in aluminium foil, so thus creating a Faraday cage.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. And I wanted to get I had a bicycle chain that would act as a lightning conductor, but we took that off the boat. I think it's what Pete probably had, because it had the plastic coating so it doesn't damage the paintwork. And I've got a pelican hook and a guardrail wire just to put in the water to try and earth it on the leeward side when I get close to a storm.
Yeah.
So there's that, but the other bit, of course, is the next leg is very tactical, whether you go north or south of Galapagos.
Yeah.
So La Nina, the sort of counterpart to El Nino, normally we have been in a La Nina, which normally runs for quite a few months, but it's just petered out really early. So the rich fishing off Peru and Ecuador, with the upwelling of the cold water that everybody prays for around Christmas time, that would normally run throughout the year now, but it's dying out already. So we're in an ENSO neutral period. So the trade winds are likely to be quite light. The cold water currents are going to be weaker. So normally, whilst that would favour going south of the Galapagos, there's a chance somebody could make a breakaway and go north, and could end up. The odds are stacked a little bit against them, but if they can benefit, they could gain a week's lead.
Yeah.
So I think the smart money is go south, try and keep close as a fleet, and not let anyone get too much of a breakaway.
Yeah.
And monitor that till you get to the trade winds, and then a bit like the Atlantic. I think once we hit the trades, it's a bit processional again. That's the downside. So when you say it's dull, I think this next leg is really interesting in what we do from departing Panama.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting out south or north of Galapagos, and then he who gets, or she who gets into the trade winds first, should be able to, run with it. Particularly if it's a slightly broader reach. So A3 full main is all conceivable. So it's just go maximum speed.
Yeah.
Surf down those waves.
Well, this is like a luxury, because I could throw all of that El Nino and all the transitions that are going on now, throw it out the window and just go the rule of thumb, don't go below the Galapagos because you'll never get out the other side. You know what I mean? It's really tricky, so it's going to be, there's no right or wrong.
That's a bit like go south to the Buttermain.
Yeah, exactly.
Cape Verde Islands, but you're going across the Atlantic.
Anyway,
that would be your advice, is it?
No, not my advice. It's just like it's
mantra.
a standard sort of thing, that's what you used to do, but it's tricky. And I think half the reason, or maybe because the Starlink's cheap, $200 for the aerial, but I think a lot of people are just going to use it for weather. Keep an eye on what's going on, currents and water surface temperature and all that sort of stuff, and try and make some decisions. But I think then even there'll be information overload, because a lot of, generally, you're quite attuned with what's going on, but I think the majority of the feed will be looking at all this stuff and not knowing how to interpret it anyway.
No, I've got a healthy mistrust of most of that data as well. There's a phenomenal amount of data gets computed to produce, say, windy or predict wind or any of those products. When you look at the databases that are collating that data, mid-Pacific, the weather stations are really sporadic. So ships will pass weather information and buoys and stuff. But there's a lot of interpolation and extrapolation to create a model, and then they colour it and they put arrows in and animate it, and everybody thinks that's true. That's fact.
I'm forever telling people on the tracker update, so look, that's assuming this is correct, because you're right. They don't have many drifting buoys, but a lot of the ships have reporting stations, and they put that in, but still big holes everywhere.
And I can remember, on the bridge of a warship, even sometimes it'd be the second officer watch should be tasked to go and do the weather signal, and and you question sometimes, when you start putting out dust devils and stuff like that, PO.
We used to be a weather station on Sir Hubert Wilkins on my little ship as well for for 3 years. So sometimes they weren't as accurate as they probably should be.
There's a great book I forget the name of the author, Reading the Glass, and he was a skipper of one of the sailing ships out of the Woods Hole Institute.
Yeah.
And they were a research sailing ship, but they got into trouble when they got down to New Zealand from their meteorological station, because they'd been tracking them and said you weren't putting out enough weather reports. So they do value the weather station outputs. And warships do it routinely, but like I say, if you've got a METOC on board who's putting it together and a meteorological officer, an oceanographic officer, then you're getting good quality data. If you got somebody straight out of officer training, putting together, we have to quality control it.
Yeah, exactly. So you're looking forward to some of the ports now?
Yeah, very much so. I'm looking forward to the islands. I mean, Marquesas I've wanted to go to for a long time. And I also quite like the fact we're going to be in quite a lot of small anchorages and places like that, proper sailing again. Marina life is not really for me. We met some great people in Shelter Bay, and those sailing around the world, and great acquaintances, friends of acquaintances. You suddenly realise how close-knit and this sort of sailing community and family is.
They're all watching the MGR now.
And they are all watching the MGR. They all think we're utterly crazy.
Yeah, well, you are.
I started putting together an article for... So I sail under the Royal Naval Sailing Association, Burgee, so they wanted something for their newsletter, and I thought about how do you start this? It's always nice to put a quote. And I chose, if you're familiar with Madness, their first ever hit single before they even be called Madness was Madness, they call it Madness, Suggs 1979. How do you build on that? And there is a sort of a general feeling that what we're doing is slightly crazy, but there seems to be a degree of respect about how we're doing it, and there's very much grassroots nature of the sailing we're doing that people really look forward to.
I'm not seeing any real negative stuff. We got hammered more with the GGR than the MGR. GGR thought we were the worst thing the sailing they'd ever seen in their life. But the MGR, we're not getting any bagging. So, but at the same time, I mentioned this to some others. Sometimes we're all, I mean, they're very good sailors. They've all built boats and blah blah blah, and we're maybe making it look a bit easier. Still a long way to go. We got to get around Cape Horn yet. I mean, Cape Horn. But anyway, that's where you run the risk, because we're all risk averse, and we're all risk mitigating everything we possibly can, and we're all sailing fast but conservative, and the boats are super strong and things like that. And I've got to be mindful that we don't run the risk people think it's just too easy. But it's the way we're doing it, I think.
As you know, as an organiser, you've got a risk management plan, you've got your emergency plan, you've collated data from us, you've notified all the rescue coordination centres. You're prepared for the worst case scenario. And, it would be naive of us to think we're not going to encounter that. And it could be any one of us gets hit by something really potentially fatal as well. So we're mindful of that. And I wouldn't say I'm risk averse. I think taking risks and enjoying risks and feeling comfortable pushing your boundaries is what makes life pleasure to live.
What makes it all happen.
And to meet like-minded people, and somebody like you in an environment that tends to be increasingly risk averse will say, no, I will put this race together and see how it flies, floats.
Well, because I know it'll happen, it's going to work.
It did, and without you it would never have happened. But go back to Bob Salmon in the first mini Transat race. Again, people would have made the same sort of criticisms of him at the time. And look at the health of the mini Transat, the 650 fleet these days. It all owes itself to that genesis.
But they're a bunch of pussies. They're surfing all the time, just not the real way.
French offshore racing is all about broad reaching. Come and do the British Ostar, which is a beat.
No, come and do the MGR. Come on, see
how you get around. So far we haven't been done much beating. And,
no, they're good fun.
That baby stay's a nightmare. I don't think we can remove it. So short tacking a Globe 5.8m.
Oh yeah, geez.
Hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your safety plan for harnesses and clipping on and all that sort of stuff? What do you do?
So actually, I've rethought that after that wave incident, because had I been in the cockpit and not clipped on, I probably would have been out of the boat at night in big seas, 60 miles off the Colombian coast. Forget it. And we carry our personal EPIRBs and stuff, but sometimes it's not on us, most of the time, I always have my life jacket and harness available. I will go forward and I will do stuff without it sometimes, but I think that's being irresponsible, really. And more from the point of view that I don't want to be in a position that you put anybody else at risk to come and try and rescue you. So it's all well having an EPIRB, but you fall in the water, on the whole, it's your fault. Don't implicate other people. So I'm going to be a lot more mature, I think, about what I do, and even if it's hot and uncomfortable, if ever I go out of the cockpit, so in the cockpit I'll be clipped on, and particularly at night. Daytime you can see what's coming, it's not such an issue. But going forward and work on the bow and spinnaker
Yeah.
hoists and drops and stuff, I definitely wear the harness.
Yeah. You happy with the boat? Like in terms of like non-skid and bloody human dynamics and
Yeah, well,
speed sailing and
Rooster, bless them, they've sent me a Red Cross parcel. I think they read between the lines that the Sudocreme alone wasn't enough to mitigate for having Kiwi grip decks and having to sit in a pool of saline, seawater for long periods of time. So it was not a pretty sight. And Steve and his wife Sarah, they called me up and said, right, you need this, you need this, you need this. And it arrived 2 days ago. So I wanted to put a quick denouement, a video together about opening and showing what I've got, because there's some great products, including really for the sort of keelboat and dinghy community, sort of hiking shorts, but not with stiff panels, but with neoprene foam and comfort.
yeah, we used to have those Musto ones. You put a bloody foam sheet in there, high density foam sheet across your bum to sit on.
Musto, but we used to have Rooster.
Well, that was
could have
30 years ago,
more superior product.
Oh, well, Musto used to sponsor me for 20 years. It was really funny. The last story I had with Musto was they made a big story about it because I wasn't wearing Musto. That's when we did the bounty boat trip. We couldn't wear Musto because it was all bright colours, and so we had these leaky bloody thingos. But anyway, that was history.
So no, actually, I do carry, for the Cape of Good Hope, I have got my Musto offshore stuff.
Yeah.
But because Rooster they're not really offshore specialists, but up to now I've been wearing their coastal inshore salopette and jacket, and it's so comfortable, really good. So, I have Musto, but I've got great loyalty to Rooster brand.
Yep. So what are you missing on board? What are you missing from your new life in the MGR?
What am I missing? Well, there's company, of course. There is family, loved ones. But we in modern communication, we can keep up to date. I'm missing my dinghy racing. I'm missing, yeah, well, it's all kicking off again now, and
oh right, yeah.
So I'll be doing the Petit Bouchon, the 10 Use Cup. I've got my Musto skiff to race, laser. There's a Laser Masters Championship, Europeans coming up. I love all that. So dinghy racing. Yeah, that's it. I think it's. And you talk about not sleeping so much. I think I said before I've got FOMO, this fear of missing out. So if I'm sleeping, I'm going to miss something that's going on the boat. It's the same with my dinghy racing. I think I'm missing out on some of the events that I could be doing back in Europe or back in home.
So what are you doing to get off the boat and relax when you're at sea? Like get your head out of the scene and just
at sea.
Yeah. So what do you to do something that's not racing, not the boat, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Jane, is that you?
Shane's just driven by on a Harley Davidson.
That's right. To relax, get
That's
your mind
the question.
space.
Actually, my iPad's died in that lockdown, so I won't have music now. So my younger daughter Freya, she's kindly putting together an MP3 player, old school one for Fiji. Yeah. But I listen to Audible, and I've got some great waterproof, open water swimming headphones that sit not in the ear but on the temples. Yeah. And so I listen. I've been Audible listening to books while I'm helming, or also I'm quite keen on languages, so I'm brushing up on my Italian and German.
You speak a few languages already. How many languages do you do?
No, Australians always flatter us because they know we speak English, but don't be intimidated by that, Doc.
Oh, okay. I speak 3 languages: English, Australian, and American. But I'm thinking of throwing the American away now.
Yeah, I used to speak English and French, Italian, German, and I'm having to learn Spanish and Vietnamese, and there's a smattering of Arabic in there somewhere, but I'm not great at that.
Yeah.
Enough to get by in, and I think it all goes back as well to learning Latin as a kid, and it sets up the structure, certainly for Romance languages, Roman origin ones, but and then German, you've got pretty much English covered. Yeah,
you've had quite an amazing career, which I think people know, with the Navy and bits and pieces. What did your parents do?
So my father was director of marine and aviation survival companies, a number of them, and he was in sales and exports principally, but he was very technical, so technical director. So he was with RFD, Viking, and then latterly with Life Raft Systems Australia, and he effectively designed the Marinark system as well, which is globally used now for mass evacuation, marine evacuation systems. Including from new aircraft carriers in the Royal Navy. My mother, she sort of had a background in sort of accountancy, and she was very good at all that sort of stuff, very bright lady, and then she became a fisherman.
A fisherman.
So she skippered.
Fisherwoman.
Yeah, she's well, fisherwoman's slightly pejorative, although she probably would qualify for that moniker as well. I think she was attracted to being a fisherman because she liked the fact when they got back to the quayside, all the fishermen drank lots of beer and told tall stories, and she's good at that too.
Yeah.
So she got into that and she loved it. And I think she would describe herself now as a retired fisherman.
Yeah.
Because she's probably a little frail for being at sea.
Okay. Brothers and sisters?
Brothers, younger brother. So I have 2 sisters and a brother. My younger brother is a fisherman, seagoing fisherman, but it's a tough living down in Salcombe in Devon. My elder sister Jane's teaching, and both sisters have lots of children, so they were very busy mums for a long time.
So
what 6 and 5.
What do they think about you stepping down into a Mini for around the world now? They think you lost the plot?
I don't think. It's interesting that, because a lot of people don't really understand what we do in the Navy either, or what Navy life is about. And sometimes I felt, being a serving naval officer, people would prejudge you and an expectation of what you are like as an individual.
Yeah.
And you could say the same for a Royal Marine or Army, but I think particularly for the naval service, the Royal Navy and the Royal Marines, there's such an eclectic range of characters that do well in the Navy. It brings a lot of, they tend to be very personal, they tend to be quite personable, very reflective, bright people. And so to sort of broad brush people, I'm quite grateful to not have that. And that's not to say, hey Don, don't mention I was in the Navy, because it was my surrogate family for 37 years. And very close friends. And it was fun, and we changed our jobs so regularly that there was never time to get bored. And it was an exciting career, and I'd recommend it to anybody. Even to Jasmine, I've said, Jasmine, you should consider maybe looking at the Royal Navy for a career. She wants a grown-up job now, and it's every bit that. So the opportunities were fantastic. But having escaped the shackles of being, a naval officer, and freedom. I've almost gone down the other one. It's freedom, and I think I'd always chose to go back down to my creative side, the artistic route. Become an artist, try and set out for that, and improve my painting and sculpture and build boats. I guess I don't want to do any. I'm the opposite from Jasmine. That I don't want a proper job. I just want freedom to do what I'd like to do.
Yeah.
The ability to gain the approbation or endorsement of what you're doing creatively if you can sell your work, but that's no guarantee there. And the chance to travel. So I don't need to be wealthy. I just need to have enough money to do the things I want to do. Really.
Sounds like a plan.
Time is more valuable than money.
Absolutely. Jeepers, buddy. That's the way it goes. All right. So I guess we could just wrap this up, and if you can finish this. Normally I just say, okay, thanks, see you later, boom, boom. But you must have the final word, because you're a word person. You're a real thinker.
Okay. Well, firstly, to anyone who's watched this far through, well done, thank you. I know these interviews can be quite lengthy. And then I just want to emanate somebody I admire greatly, and I just say, bugger off, Don.
Okay, see ya.